All right, let's look at Revelation 14. Let's turn over there and we'll... So, it's really hard, really, even from the beginning of chapter 6, where they started opening the seals, and then they started having the trumpets, and we hadn't even got to the bowl judgments yet. But it's kind of difficult to put everything on a timeline. I mean, we have traditionally been taught a certain timeline, and so we kind of fall back on it. But just actually from an actual biblical perspective, the Bible really doesn't give us a real clear timeline. But I will say that when those trumpets started sounding, especially when you had the two witnesses, we looked at them back in chapter 11, that was probably midway point of the tribulation. That was probably at the 3.5 year period. And so we're kind of... I think, in my opinion, in the back end of the tribulation, coming to the very end. In fact, in chapter 14, so up until now, we've really been talking about how the Antichrist and the beast and the great false prophet and Satan are really in control, and they are really wreaking havoc and all of this kind of stuff. But now it's really like... starting tonight, it's really like God really begins to take over. God really begins to put things into His hand. Of course, we know that God is in control, and God has always been in control. And that's really one of the reasons for the book of Revelation, to show that He's in control. But actually, He begins to really start taking absolute control, I think, starting in chapter 14 here, which I believe, again, is toward the end of what we'd call the Great Tribulation. Let me read the first 5 verses. He says, John says, Then I looked, and behold, a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, like the voice of loud thunder, and I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever He goes. These were redeemed from among men, being firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. So he has this vision, and he sees. Now, I'm going to say that I believe that this is a heavenly vision. I don't think that he sees Jesus standing on the literal Mount Zion yet. We know that Jesus is going to do that, but I think that this is a heavenly vision. I think this is heavenly Zion, where he says it's a lamb. Obviously, this lamb is Christ. He's standing on Mount Zion, and with him, he has these 144,000 who have the mark of God, have God's name, God's seal on their forehead. We were introduced to this 144,000 back over in chapter 7. In chapter 7, starting in verse 1, and this is part of the 6th seal. It says, After I saw these things, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, or on the sea, or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was granted to harm the earth, saying, Do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed. It was 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed. So this 144,000, there are 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So these are all Jewish people. They're all Israelites. And it doesn't really say this explicitly, but we're going to see here back over in chapter 14 that they are obviously very unique and very special and very anointed by the Lord. I believe that they are sort of I believe that they are evangelists that will be evangelizing the world during at least the first half of the tribulation. They are going to see. Here's what here's in my mind what kind of takes place. So when we say that Israel was God's chosen people, I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that they were going to be the only people that were going to go to heaven? No. What it meant is that they were going to be the nation that took the gospel to the rest of the world. That's what it means by they were chosen. They were going to be priests, the priests of God. So they rejected that role in God's sovereignty. They made the choice, but in choosing, they fulfilled God's purposes, like Sunday. So, like I said, Sunday. So, but they refused that role, and so then we entered into what we call the church age. Now, I don't want to say that God doesn't work with Israel anymore, but what I am saying is that right now He's working through His church, the Gentile church, the church of the nations, the church of the world. So when the church is gone, when He raptures the church, He is then going to begin to work again through His nation and through His people, Israel. Their plan hasn't changed. They are still going to do what God chose them to do. But it's going to happen during an extremely difficult period. So I believe these 144,000 I believe that they are Hebrew evangelists. Again, the Bible doesn't actually say that. But we will see in these verses that they are obviously anointed, protected by God. But I believe that they are going to evangelize the world during that time with the gospel. And you're also going to have those two witnesses that we talked about from chapter 11 who are going to, they're going to be like Elijah, man. They're going to be able to call down fire. They're going to be able to spit fire out of their mouth. It's really going to be a crazy time. So anyhow, he looks, and again, I believe in the heavenly Zion, and he has these 144,000, and they are all standing with him. So at this point, and this is something I don't really know the answer to. So at this point, this 144,000 are no longer on the earth. And I've told you that this is at the very end of the Great Tribulation period, that where we are now. So did they all get killed? And I don't know. Did they get raptured in some way? Like when the two witnesses? I don't know. But here they are. They're all together. They're with the Lamb. They're standing on Mount Zion. I guess you could say when John sees them there, it's like, for them anyhow, it's like mission accomplished. They have fulfilled their purpose. They have done what they are supposed to do. Even if whatever their purpose, even if it wasn't what I said, whatever their purpose was, they have fulfilled it. It is mission accomplished. They are now standing with the Lamb. They are standing on spiritual Mount Zion. Mount Zion is Jerusalem, by the way. And so Mount Zion is where the temple was built. And so Jerusalem is often called Zion, or the city of God. And so Mount Zion is that mountain where the temple was. So he says, I heard a voice, verse 2, he says, I heard a voice from heaven like the voice of many waters and like the voice of the loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. And they sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who redeemed from the earth. So he hears something. He hears, sound like, it's a voice, but it sounds like, like a waterfall. It sounds like the sound of rushing waters. And then he hears these harpists playing a song. And then he hears this song. And it's a new song, and he's making reference to how they're singing it before the throne. Those four cherubim that we saw in chapter 4 and 5, and those elders that we saw, they're there, and they are singing this song in front of them. Now, I think it's interesting to note, and this is one of the reasons that I'm telling you that they are special to God in some way. It says that no one could learn that song except the 144,000. I'm telling you, there is something. I've already preached once today, so I'm a little tongue-tied. There is something very special about these people to God and to Christ. They are anointed by Him. They are sealed by Him. They are with Him. They're on spiritual Mount Zion. They've come out of the tribulation. He says, who were redeemed from the earth. And there is a new song that's being sung in the very throne room of God. And they are the only people who can learn this song. They're the only ones. They're special in some way. They are just special. They are special and blessed by God in some way. Let's see what I've written to myself. They are, and if they are sort of evangelists or witnesses to the gospel during that period, there never has been and never will be anyone like them. Because there's never going to be a period under which they were witnesses like is going to happen in the end times. They are going to have to be extremely bold in their faith. They are going to have to be extremely powerful in the Spirit, because they are going to be witnessing for Christ during the most dark, most deadly, most satanic rule time that there could ever exist. I mean, Satan himself is going to be the leader of the world at the time in the form of the Antichrist. So it is going to be, they are just extremely, extremely unique. So these are the ones who are not defiled with women. They are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits to God and to the Lamb. So they are morally upright. We're going to see in a minute where it says, verse 5 says that in their mouth there was found no deceit. They are without fault before the throne of God. These people were pure. They were morally upright, morally upstanding. It says they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These people can really sing "Wherever he leads, I'll go." I mean, they can really sing it because they do it and have done it. And God has, or Christ has, it says he's redeemed them from among men. And again, like I said, I don't know. Do they all die? At some point, does God allow the Antichrist to kill them? And so now or do they get some kind of special, rapture like Elijah and Enoch did, and like the two witnesses did? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't say, but they're all there with Christ on the Mount Zion. And it says that they were redeemed from among men. And it says that they were the first fruits to God and to the Lamb. So they are very, very special, and certainly represent more that will come later on. Anything about the 144,000 before I move on by them?
They are all men.
So it seems to indicate that just by saying they were not defiled with women. It seems to indicate that they were all men. But it doesn't say that they were. But it seems to imply that, is my opinion. They are completely devoted to following God, to following Christ. They're completely devoted to following him. Their character is above reproach. And obviously they are led by the Spirit as well. Anything else? Yes, sir. Yeah. So the first fruits represents the very first of the harvest. It also represents sort of the best, but that there's more to come and more to follow. So they may be the very first that come out of this great tribulation period, and that many more are gonna come out after them, of people who are going to pay with their lives for believing the gospel. That's a good question, and I kind of wrestled with that one a little bit. Okay, well, I've thought about it, but that's a good question. Because, in our way of thinking, the church has already been raptured, which I believe. So you would think we're the first fruits, but I guess we're not. The distinction here may be between the Gentiles and, like I said, he's back working with Israel now, working through Israel. Someone else? Okay, so for the rest of the chapter here, we're going to get some angels. And these angels are going to appear on the scene. and they are all going to have some sort of a message. They're going to have some sort of a proclamation. And so we're going to look at them. So the first one, he's going to be in what? Verses 6 and 7? Verses 6 and 7. So he says, "Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, 'Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come, and worship Him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water.'" So this last thing, now I'm telling you, that we're at the end now. We're at the very end. And have you ever heard a preacher say that when we come to the end, that there's going to be a great push with the gospel? The problem is, I don't think it's in our lifetime necessarily. It's right there. This is the very end. And why I say it's not in our lifetime, the church is gone by this point. But this is going to be a great push. Now I'm not saying that can't happen with us as well, but I'm just saying that this is going to be a great proclamation of the gospel. And there's going to be a couple of times in here where it's like God is just saying, "I'm giving you one more shot. I'm giving you one more chance. I'm giving you another chance to believe and to receive the gospel." I will say this though, and I don't know that we can make anything of this. I don't know that we can make anything of this, and then I'm going to make something of it. This gospel that he's saying he's proclaiming here, first of all, he calls it the everlasting gospel. And he says, and it's for everyone who lives on the earth, every nation, every tribe, every tongue, every people. So this angel is going out to the entire world, and he is going to be presenting them with this gospel to fear God and to worship Him. And this gospel really goes back to, it really goes back to Romans chapter 1, I think. And it's kind of of course, we understand that the gospel is that Christ died according to the Scriptures and was buried and rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. But Romans chapter 1 and verse 18, it says, look, it says, "The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." Now that's going to be happening when they're living. That's going to be the world that's going to be lived in. And he says, "Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, because God has shown it to them. Since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts and foolish in their hearts." So this last angel is coming, and he's coming with that same kind of message. He says, "Fear God and give glory to Him, because the hour of His judgment is come, and worship Him who made heaven, earth, the sea, and the springs of water." Because they are going to be living in such a deluded, dark, blind time that this angel has to go back and say, "Look, you know that God is real because He's revealed Himself in creation," just like Paul says in Romans 1:18. You know He's real. He's revealed Himself in creation. Now you need to glorify Him and be grateful to Him and praise Him and worship Him. He's calling them away from this worship of the Antichrist and worship of the beast. It is an everlasting gospel. It is a universal gospel. It's to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. It is for everyone. And this, I wonder if, and I actually, because I'm bringing it up, I think it is. I think that this is the fulfillment of what Jesus said in Matthew 24. And again, Matthew 24 is Jesus telling His disciples what's going to happen before He comes again. And remember, when we did Matthew 24, I pointed this out. He's talking about before He comes the second time. He's not talking about before the rapture. They say, when are you coming again? And what are the signs? They didn't have the concept of a rapture. And he actually talks about the rapture starting in about verse 36 over there. But he's telling them things that are going to happen before. And in Matthew 24:14, he says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Then the end will come. It doesn't say then there's going to be a rapture or then there's going to be a tribulation. He says then it's going to be the end. Once this gospel is preached all over the world, then it's going to be the end. These 144,000 and whoever this angel empowers, or whether he does it himself, this, in my opinion, is the fulfillment of that gospel being preached. Like it says, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people all over the world. This is going to be the last great final push. It is going to be during the darkest hour. The darkest hour is when the great final push of the gospel is going to go forward. Whew. I got that close to preaching right there. So, back over there in that fifth seal, you have the martyrs. They didn't believe the martyrs. They didn't respond to the two witnesses. They didn't respond to the 144,000. So now he's sending an angel and he's saying, come on, y'all. You got another shot. I just kept thinking of, I believe is it 1st or 2nd Peter, where Peter says that God is not slack concerning his promise, but he is long suffering, not wanting that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. That God is patient and God is long suffering, and God truly is the God of another chance, and He keeps giving them another chance here. So then the next angel, he comes on the scene, and he is in verse 8. So another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Okay, so Babylon. And we're going to look, there's going to be another vision about Babylon in chapter 18. So Babylon in Revelation, and it's funny that he gives us this little snippet of it before he gives us the actual vision of it. But Babylon represents the entire economic and political system of the Antichrist. And so what this angel is saying, he's saying it's over. It's done. And we're also going to have a vision of a woman on the beast, and she represents that end time religion. There's going to be a religious system in place in Babylon that the Antichrist is going to use until he has no use for her anymore, until he wants to make himself Lord. And so he will rise to power on the back of this blasphemous religious system, but then he will destroy her when he decides he's God and is going to present himself to the people as God. You would think this is you're like, Brother Keith, you're just kind of making this up. I'm telling you, it's in the Bible. I know it sounds crazy and wild, but I'm telling you, it's there. So we'll see her too. Well, there's a chapter where there's a vision about her in verse 17, the scarlet woman. So Babylon again represents the entire corrupt system that the Antichrist rules over. So the third angel is starting in verse 9. So then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. They shall have no rest day or night who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and from the works that follow them. So you have here this last angel, and he's pronouncing what's going to happen to those who worship the beast, take his mark, and the judgment that is going to come upon them. And you'll notice words like torment, and the smoke of their torment rising up. He'll drink, verse 10 says that he will drink of the wine of the wrath of God. So, this is just a picture of God pouring out his wrath. Let's see, I have a verse from Psalm 75 noted here, and I can't think of what it says off the top of my head. So let me see what it says. Psalm 75, verse 8. Psalm 75, 8, he says, "For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is fully mixed. He pours it out. Surely its dregs shall all the wicked of the earth drain and drink down." So this drinking of the wrath of the wine of his wrath is sort of symbolic of God pouring out his judgment upon them. So in verse 10 it says, "He himself shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation." So listen, this is not something that we preach about a lot, because we hammer home the grace and the mercy and the love of God. But I'm going to tell you, in this day, it is going to be a great judgment, and it's going to come from the wrath of God, but it is a righteous and right and sovereign and just wrath that he's going to pour out on all those. And I want you to notice that it said, which is poured out full strength in the cup of his indignation. So there's a verse that I love to quote, and I can't even remember where it's found now. It's in one of the minor prophets, but he says, in wrath, remember mercy. I love that verse, because he's talking to God, and he's saying, God, when you have to judge me, just remember your mercy in your wrath. But here at this end, when this time comes, it says it's going to be poured out full strength. It's not going to be mixed with mercy. It's not going to be mixed with grace. It's going to be full strength as he poured. This is kind of depressing, isn't it? But it just should motivate us to see the urgency of the hour and the urgency of the time, because we don't want people to be stuck in this and be caught in this. So that they have been invited. The first angel invited. He said, man, believe. The second angel warned them. And now they're being told of exactly what's going to happen. So he'll be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb. The smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. They have no rest day or night who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. So we saw back in some of these trumpets, when God began to pour out, put some of his judgment upon the people, the scripture there in Revelation said that in that day that men will want to die, but they won't be able to. He says that they'll pray and ask for the rocks to fall on them because they'll want to die. Listen, forever and ever, the torment of God, they will want to die and not be able to. That's hard. The smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. They have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. So then he says, here's the patience of the saints, verse 12. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow after them." So I'm going to tell you what, at this point of the Great Tribulation, when the Antichrist has declared himself to be God, and he is all out annihilation of everybody who claims the name of Christ, there are going to be any countless number of what's the word I'm looking for? Ruthless, vicious ways that he is going to use to to kill God's people and to God's children. But the angel says, or the voice from heaven says here, he says, they're blessed. The ones that died during this time, they are blessed. They are going to be able to rest from their labors. This is the patience. That word patience is endurance. Listen, the people of God, the people who turn to God during that time are going to have, they're going to have an incredible endurance factor. Listen, when we came to Christ here in America, it was no big deal. Everybody was proud of you. They patted you on the back. They showed up for your baptism. They hugged you. They loved you. That ain't the way it's going to be for them. It's going to be, they're going to pay with their lives. And they're going to know it when they make the decision that they're going to pay with their lives. And like I said, it's going to be vicious and violent. So that is the endurance, and they are blessed because they can rest from their labors. So then starting verse 14. So then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud. He said, thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. So again, coming on the cloud, one like the Son of Man. We understand this to be Christ. I believe it's Christ. Even though it says like the Son of Man, I truly believe it was the Son of Man. He's coming on the cloud. He has got the sickle. It reminds me of Matthew chapter 13, starting in verse 24. And in Matthew chapter 13, starting in verse 24, Jesus is telling a parable. And he's telling a parable about the wheat and the tares. And he says that, a farmer goes out and he sows wheat in his field. And then during the night, the enemy comes along and he sows some tares in the field. And apparently while wheat and tares are these particular kind of tares were growing together, you can't tell the difference. You can't tell the difference until they make a head and are ready to be reaped. And so the workers came and they asked the farmer, they said, well, do you want us to go in there and root out those tares? And he said, no, I don't. Because in the process of rooting out the tares, you might also root up some good wheat. He says, but here's what's going to happen. At the end, the reapers are going to come. And when he's talking about the end, he will actually say that, because he will explain it, and he'll say that they are the angels. The reapers are going to come, and they are going to separate the wheat from the tares. This harvest is going to separate God's people from not God's people. It's just sort of a picture of that. There's going to be a separation of the wheat and the tares. And the tares, it says over in the parable of chapter 13, is that they're going to be bundled up and thrown in the fire and burned. And so now we're getting John seeing sort of the spiritual depiction of this happening when Christ comes and he's got this sickle and the angel says, the field is ready, reap it. And he thrusts in that sickle and he gets reaped. And there's a separation. Now he also sees it in another way, starting in verse 17. He says, so then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and he also having a sharp sickle. And so another angel came out from the altar who had power over fire. And he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth, gathered the vine of the earth, threw it into the winepress for the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. So in this next picture, he sees it's a harvesting of grapes. It's a harvesting of the fruit of the vine. And this is, and it says that they are fully ripe, is what my translation says. Does anybody have a translation that says something other than fully ripe? Just out of curiosity. And most people probably use the same translation, because most people like to use the same translation the preacher uses. Just as they're ripe. So apparently this word actually means overripe. They're actually like rotten. I mean, they've ripened and they've gotten rotten, but they're apparently bad. But anyhow, this is a harvest of just who's going to be trampled under the wrath of God. This is again, we talked about the cup of the indignation representing that so often in the Bible. And so he reaps the world with the grain harvest. The tares are separated. And so now this, I think, is just symbolic of reaping just those tares. It's reaping them as rotten grapes. And they're put in the wine press and they're trampled outside the city. It says until blood comes out of the wine press up to the horse's bridle for 1,600 furlongs. And a lot of people sort of equate this with the Battle of Armageddon. And we will see that in the sixth bowl in chapter 16, starting in verse 12. I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up so that the kings of the east might be prepared. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the false prophet. They are the spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world, and they gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who watches, keeps his garment, lest he walk naked. And they see his shame, and they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Armageddon. So in this sixth bowl, you will see that God is going to draw all the kings of the world. He's going to dry up the Euphrates. He's going to prepare the way. All the kings of the earth, they're going to gather over in the valley of Megiddo. They're going to gather there to go to war. They're going to gather there for battle, and that's where God will slay them. So a lot of people see this chapter 14, verse 20, with this blood flowing. They want to equate it with that, and it might be, and it might not be. 1,600 furlongs. Somebody tell me how. I'm thinking 200 miles. I don't. Is that what it says? 200 miles? Okay.
184 miles.
Okay. So 180 to 200 miles of this deep. It could be symbolic, I don't know, but the bottom line is that's a whole lot of judgment, because that's a whole lot of blood flowing out of there. Well, that's kind of depressing, isn't it?
We're not going to be here.
We're not going to be here. Let me just reassure you with that, Daryl. You can sleep through this part because we're not going to be here. That's all I got. Anything before I close? Yes, sir, Bobby.
About one like the Son of Man and instructs him to take his sickle, and then in verse 19 it says the angel swung his sickle on the earth.
Yeah, so
It may be the angel of the Lord.
it could be. In fact, in the parable of the wheat and tares, Jesus says that the reapers are the angels. So it could be an angel of the Lord. And you do have a different one. The one that reaps the world is different, because there's another angel that comes out with another sickle that reaps the clusters of the vine. But yeah, you're right. It's an urgent hour, y'all. It's an urgent time for us to... We need to make sure that our little corner of the world knows and hears the gospel.